Hi, I'm Andrew Tallents. I'm the founder of the Talents Partnership. I'm a guest on the Online Prosperity Show today, and I'm going to be talking through how you can change your life so that you can live your professional and personal dreams through self-coaching systems and turning up in terms of accountability every single day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we uncover stories, strategies, and secrets behind thriving businesses and empowered leaders. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today I'm joined by a man whose name says it all. Andrew, how are you doing, my man?
I'm good, Prosper. It's great to be on the show today.
Absolutely. For those that are tuning in for the very first time, our guest is the founder of the Talents Partnership. He's a leadership coach, author, and seasoned expert in human capital solutions with over 25 years of experience shaping CEOs and executives into the leaders that they're meant to be. So, in essence, what he's doing is transforming leadership capability. Now, I just want to paint a picture for you, just so you understand where our guest is actually coming from. So I want you to imagine, having a job where you're earning, it's a six-figure salary job, you're traveling the world and having everything you could ever thought of, dreamt of, and or wanted. But then you realize that your most valuable asset, which is time with your family, was actually sleeping away every time you get on that plane or every time you jet set. And that's what became Andrew's reality in 2017. And it actually led to a bold decision, which he left the corporate ladder behind to start his own business, one that has now allowed him to align with his values and his own professional life. Now, today, Andrew helps leaders all over the world take control of their lives and their careers through self-coaching and emotional intelligence. Now, Andrew, I could go on and talk about things I'm not even qualified about. Tell us, what was life like in the corporate world before you decided to take the change?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this and watching this can relate to this, that when you are striving to be the most successful version of yourself on the corporate ladder, it comes with lots of sacrifices. In 2016, I was working extremely hard. I was traveling a lot. I was not in the best of health. I was under pressure. There's always targets. And even though that's something that I'd always done very successfully, it was starting to take its toll, and I was disconnecting from the work I was doing. And even though I didn't understand at the time how that manifested in other relationships, the people around me in the business, I was a director of a company at the time, had equity in the company. And also my clients were probably feeling it just in terms of the way I was showing up in those relationships, more transactional rather than relationship focused in that sense. So you're right to paint the picture that I was very successful. I was earning the most money I'd earned in my life. I had equity in the company with a potential upside. And yet when I went home in the evening, I just felt empty and didn't feel motivated to continue with that.
No, thank you so much for painting that picture for us, because so many people, aspire to, like you did, to be the director of a company, have an equity stake, and also, travel around the world, which is the main reason why people start their own business, so they can travel around the world. But I can imagine you were on the company credit card, and everything else was sort of supplied to you and given to you. What would have been wrong with that?
There was nothing wrong with it on the face, but this goes back to something from my childhood, which I'm very happy to explain whenever you want me to. But I was basically in an automatic pilot mode of just doing this because it was habit. It was something that was formed earlier in my psyche, in terms of my hard wiring of my brain, that actually unconsciously was the right thing that I thought I should be doing. Earning a salary for my family, sacrificing myself to do it, and not really putting my own needs as a top priority first in terms of well-being, happiness, and feeling that contentment. So that was the main reason.
Okay, so this childhood wiring, is it something that just happened in the Talents family, or is it something that is happening to everybody else in the world?
Well, it's happening to a lot of people in the world. So I also have a podcast, Prosper, and it's called Confessions of a Successful Leader. And the reason that podcast is created is because it's made for leaders who on the outside appear successful in the world. But actually, what's been driving them has been something that's happened to them in childhood. It's usually traumatic. Now, this can be something as small as being the youngest sibling, where the father figure or the mother figure in the family chooses not necessarily to prioritize that sibling in terms of love, investment, just preference. And for the rest of their life, that leader is trying to prove to their father or their mother that they're worthy of their love, for example. So that is mild trauma, all the way up to, and this is horrible when it happens to people, losing a loved one when we're children in life. So that might be, again, a father figure, a parental figure, a guardian figure. And that can affect us. So in my world, I was affected because I had mild trauma in my childhood. And most of the leaders I work with and have come on the show have suffered similar outcomes. And they become successful leaders because they're running away from something, or they're trying to hide from something, and they're just driven to actually succeed. Do you want to explain what happened in my childhood?
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
was going to
sure.
go and ask, you
Yeah,
did experience a bit of mild trauma, right? So if you,
yeah.
yeah.
And again, people will be able to relate to this who are listening to it. So I was very fortunate. I was living in a house where my father was working in Saudi Arabia. As you know, it's not changed there. The tax regime was very beneficial. He was away for 6 weeks at a time. And he was back for 2 or 3 weeks back in the UK, where I was studying at the time. I was 15 years old. And he wrote to me one day on Paravion blue notepaper, which I think you can still get, but people don't use as much now. And in that letter, I've still got it. I've got the letter framed. He said, Andrew, as you know, I'm away a lot at the moment. I'm very busy trying to earn money for the family, but your mother is struggling with depression. And your brother is struggling with me being away. He was playing truant from school. He wasn't attending school. And so what I need you to do, Andrew, being the eldest boy of the two, is to actually look after them both while I'm away. Now, that doesn't necessarily seem like a big thing at the time because you do it for your family, right? And I was 15 years old. I was doing GCSEs here in the UK, the main exams. And I was also striving to go to university for the first time in our generation of our family. And so I just basically got on with it. And during the next 2 years, as I went through the last 2 years of my schooling at high school, I basically learned how to shut my emotions off. I learned how to look after people. I learned how to put people before me. I learned how to deal with setbacks. I learned how to become resilient. I learned how to do lots of things. I learned how to achieve things in difficult circumstances. And this stayed with me all through my life as a leader because I was driven until the age of 47, only 8 years ago, when I had my first therapy session. And my therapist said to me, Andrew, you do know that the whole world revolves around you, and you only ever speak about I. It's never we or us, it's I. And she wasn't saying that to be critical of me. It was a reality. My world was just one dimension of how can I actually generate lots of money for my family because that's what my father had done. And that's what I thought I was on this planet to do. So that didn't make me a bad person. I was a very successful leader. But the problem was, it wasn't about how successful I was in relationships. It was how successful I was in earning money. And that's two very different things.
Mm.
So you can still be 55 years old or 35 or 45, it doesn't matter. But if you have that wake up call to say, actually, can I live my life in a different way that's based on relationship that leads to prosperity and to money? Or do I continue to live my life focusing on gaining money? And there's just two ways of doing it.
Absolutely. You see, the thing is, and thank you so much for taking us back to that particular time when parents say or do certain things, they literally are, and I'm not being defensive, and I'm saying this with utmost love and respect. I'm not saying that this is what would have happened. They would have thought they're empowering you at that particular time, and that's the best information they had, so that at least somebody is looking at after the family while they were away. Did you end up, at least now that you know about this, having this conversation with dad, or was that ever possible?
Yeah, it probably was. And there's never been any resentment or ill feeling, or it's just me recognizing, becoming aware that the way I've become a leader over the last 35 years or so is because of what happened to me back then, partly, and also partly what you're born with in terms of natural leadership talent. And for me to understand that's why I've not necessarily been focused in relationships. I've been through one divorce, Prosper. I've not necessarily been close to a lot of my family members over the years. I find it difficult to build emotional ties, so a lot of that is down to my ability to shut those kinds of feelings off when I was having to do all those things and juggle everything as a 15-year-old. So it just means now in life, I approach things differently and I'm more present and more loving unconditionally. But it's taken me 47 years to get to that point. And I'm not recommending this for everybody, but it's just raising awareness that people out there might want to just check, where are they right now? And are they leading themselves in the most effective way to feel fulfilled in life?
Right. Now, Andrew, fish do not see the water that they swim in, and neither do people see the air that they breathe. It only takes a certain thing that then breaks that pattern for people to then realize. For you, obviously, you would have been humming like that, but you just mentioned in 2016, was there a specific incident that would have actually happened and you're like, okay, all right, I think this is time for me to let go? Did somebody leave, or what would have actually happened?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this normally happens, doesn't it? So there's a trigger event. And what I try and teach when I'm working with other people is that actually we shouldn't wait for those trigger events. Some of us don't have those trigger events. So let's actually be conscious about the way we lead our lives. But for me, it was three things in 2016. So the first is I was worried about my own well-being because I was starting to display some addictive behaviors, including alcohol and work, which is very interesting because a lot of people out there don't even realize they're addicted to work. But when we're working, 12, 15 hours rather than being at home for dinner, etc. So that was the first thing. I was worried about my behavior patterns. The second thing was I was on the board of the company at the time, and this is all common knowledge. There had been a change in the leadership in the company, and we were resetting for another 5 years. And my chairman had said to me, look, I need you to stick around for another 5 years as we go through this next iteration for the growth of the company. And don't forget, I'd already been there 10 years at that point. And I just thought to myself, can I commit to another 5 years here, or am I really going to stay? And do I want to leave in that point? So there was some kind of push factor. And so I decided not to commit for the 5 years. And then the third thing was a pull factor. Probably 2 years prior to that, I'd been mentored by a lady called Judith Nicol, who had retrained as a coach. And in 2016, I'd known nothing about coaching. I'd never been coached. I had never coached anybody. I didn't know what it was. And she opened my eyes and said to me, Andrew, I think you make a great coach. And so I put to my current business that I wanted to set up a coaching business within our brand. And I was told, look, we're going to stick to our knitting. We're going to grow the business over these next 5 years in this area. And so that was another factor. I decided there was a pull factor for me to go and try this out somewhere else. And in the end, it led to 2017 in terms of me taking the risk of doing it myself. So those were the three trigger points that enabled me to change my life. A lot of people out there don't have the luxury of that because it doesn't happen to them. And therefore, we have to make it happen ourselves.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for opening that part, because this now introduces a mentor who became, the character, or that sort of, spark that then got you to get started with on this journey. What was the experience? Because you said you had not experienced coaching, right? And obviously this would have been something very foreign to you. What were the first day experiencing this newfound way of being?
Well, there's a couple of things to talk about here. There's one about actually doing it in the first place. So I believe you, me, everybody out there listening to this has this gift within them that they probably are already practicing without them really knowing it. And it needs to really blossom for them to feel fulfilled. And for me, when I was in recruitment, in executive search, placing candidates into roles, because that's what I used to do, I used to earn a lot of money from it. I was taking a slightly different approach to other search consultants out there, headhunters. I was actually coaching them, but I didn't know I was doing it. I was actually making sure they were okay in the process. I was making sure it was the right role for them. I was training for the interview process. So what I was doing as an executive search consultant without really knowing it was displaying a lot of coaching skills, which I was obviously destined to do, which meant that when I started coaching other people, I had some natural ability. Now, of course, I didn't know exactly what I was doing in terms of the framework, in terms of how to do it properly. I got trained in 2017 by the AOEC in London, so I got some credentials. So, I had the badge, if you like, the certificate. But it was very scary because what a lot of people do when they go into this industry, and I was running my own business at the same time, is it's about that value that we put onto how we're being associated with the person we're coaching. And I was very nervous. I wanted to make sure I did the right thing for my clients. And of course, I mucked up plenty of times, and I learned how to do it the right way. I know how to do that now, but it's a journey, and I was training all the time. So I had lots of people that came to me at the time who I'd known from the past, who were very kind to me, and they came to me to receive coaching. I did it at reduced rates to start with, and I built up my confidence. And now I just love what I do. I'm coaching a team today, later on today here in the UK, and I just do that every day now, and it's something I love. But it was very scary to begin with.
I can imagine. And scary translates to imposter syndrome, pretty much,
Yeah.
in today's terms. So many people would have maybe, okay, fine, you've taken the leap, but now what? Because, back in the time, you were on the company's branding, you were on the company's, marketing and everything else. Now you have to literally show up as Andrew Tallents, and what have you got to offer? Now, this is something that a lot of people might, be very worry about, this imposter syndrome, and maybe you didn't have a problem with the startup capital because your job was maybe okay, but maybe that would have also occurred in the beginning. How did you navigate the actual confidence part? Because I think that's very important. Just saying, oh, I started doing it, some people wouldn't know where to actually start.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I was very lucky that I was taught this part of the course that I studied in London, the AOEC. And what they are very good at doing, it's a credible training company, is they get you to work out what kind of coach you are and what kind of founder you are. And more importantly, in today's terms, who's your ICP, your ideal client profile? Who is it that you're serving and why? So that when I meet those potential clients, for me, it was chief executives and founders because I'd had exposure to those in my headhunting career. So I knew those were the people I wanted to coach. And I really had to dig deep into myself to say, why was I interested in coaching them? And the reason for me is because I didn't want them to have the same experience that I had in my corporate world in terms of feeling that discontent and that not feeling fulfilled, so I could help them to get to a different place if that's what they chose. So to answer your question, for me to gain credibility quickly and to make sure I hit the ground running and really felt confident, it was those two things: really understanding why, who was my ICP, and then telling those people and them experiencing in my coaching when I did it. So it was authentic, as opposed to, I'm just going to try and get 30 coaching clients this year. I don't care who they are. I don't care what kind of background they have. I don't know why I'm coaching them. I don't know what I'm going to charge them. And I remember this is very important for people to know, particularly if you're going into the helping professions. It's so important to not devalue your own service to others. So I came in at a very high price with my clients. They could always knock me down and negotiate, but I really wanted to make sure I set a benchmark in terms of why this was worthwhile, why people should invest. And I take that position today as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I was told this when we got started, Andrew. Like, you mentioned, wow, your name is Prosper, right? Already, that's already established. That is my name. You didn't show up and say, oh, I think I'm gonna call you James because you look like some kind of a James, or you look like some kind of an Andrew. Whatever it is that you present yourself as is how people are going to actually appreciate you in the marketplace. Nobody questions, the price of a Rolex or a Rolls Royce. Nobody stands outside saying, hey, we want you to put down the price, because that's what the market, Rolex has put in the marketplace. But that comes with aligning your values with who you are, who you want to work with. Like you said, not just any kind of person who at least can subscribe to whatever it is that you do. First of all, how did refining your values now influence the approach that you now have to the work that you're doing, and also maybe to your life? What sort of lessons can people learn about this alignment that you now have?
It's a great question. And this is something I was talking about with a client last week. It's really interesting. If you look at, there's a great book that was written in the 1950s called On Becoming a Person by Carl Rogers. And it's a psychotherapist view on how people in the helping profession can best help their clients. And if you think about any client out there, any leader out there, there's usually different levels of self-awareness. Where I was in 2015 was I did not think I had a problem. Because I was very successful. I was earning the money. Everyone thought I was successful. And therefore, I just kept doing it. I then became aware in 2016 that I had a problem, but I didn't know what the problem was, and I didn't seek any help for it. In 2017, I realized I had a problem, and I actually started to seek some help, and therefore, I could actually start to work out eventually that I was part of the problem. When we get to a stage further on, I recognize I am the problem. I'm not just part of the problem, I am the problem in the way I show up in life. So what was really important for me in 2017 and is today is around the value set of me owning my own life and having the accountability to lead my own life and how I show up in relationships, and recognize that when it doesn't go well, it's me. It's not the environment. It's not the market. It's not the lack of funds. It's not the client. It's me. And so therefore, when I'm working with clients and the way I qualify them, I want them to tell me that they recognize they're part of the problem and they want to go really deep internally to work out how they can solve it with support from someone like me or self-coaching tools, which we'll talk about later. And so there's got to be an alignment of values between me, the client, the organization they're working for, that they recognize they're the problem, they want to own the problem and be part of the solution with some support. So that's been the biggest lesson for me.
Absolutely. And that kind of ownership is like borderline military type ownership, because you have to own the decision or the choices that you make in order for you to be doing have a happier existence. And I don't think so many people would want to have that kind of ownership. If they sort of reach a certain level, now they have to be responsible for everything else that happens to them. And I think that's the reason why we get paid, Andrew, because somebody is always looking for someone to blame, so that it's not them. But you just sort of hinted on self-coaching, which is what then ignited you having this awareness that I have to take ownership of wherever it is that you were headed to and you were going. Can you maybe explain what this self-coaching is and why it's such a powerful tool for leaders? Because I'm getting scared, Andrew.
Well, I'm really excited for this, and we can either be scared and we can embrace. But the best analogy for this is, we can all relate to this. Let's say that we've lost our way in December and we've eaten too much, and we come into January, and we employ a personal fitness trainer. A personal trainer. Now, when we're with that personal fitness trainer for an hour, we feel good. We know exactly what to do. They push us, and we get the most out of ourselves in terms of the cardio, whatever it is we need. And then we don't see them for a week. And in between, we go back to doing what we did before in terms of the eating and not really the training, etc., because there's nobody there to help us with that. So if we think about self-coaching from a leadership perspective, our own lives, it's very similar. So when we engage with a coach, we're there with them for 2 hours, whatever it is, and we actually feel good about ourselves. We gain some insights. We commit to doing some things and changing our behaviors. And then we go back. And the next time we see the coach, we tell them, well, I didn't really get time to do that, and they let me down, and there's always an excuse. So what self-coaching is all about is actually learning the tools and the techniques every single day for you and I to actually learn how we can lead ourselves more effectively, how we can coach ourselves effectively through reflection, and how we can make sure we hold ourselves to account in terms of things we're aspiring for each day. Now, the reason this is exciting, there's a framework which I wrote about in my book in 2021 during COVID, but actually there's now AI tools to help us with this. So we should be scared, Prosper, because this is going to actually change the whole coaching industry, because part of what we do and part of what we're good at is asking the right question of a leader, of an individual, so they can actually work out the answer because they know it already within themselves. AI can already do that. Where coaching is really going to help in the future is where that PT comes in. It's about those moments where we actually need another human being to put an arm around us, to give us some comfort, to give us some compassion, to actually give us some presence to help us with coaching. But everything else can be done through self-coaching in terms of daily discipline, through behaviors that we exhibit as human beings, and the use of AI. And that's what my future is all about now in terms of me enabling organizations and leaders and teams to do this. And it's just absolutely fascinating.
Absolutely. So, in essence, what you're saying is we just now need to be professional huggers then, because the rest has
It is.
has been.
But we're good at that. That's where we're coming from. So that compassion, we still need those moments. There's some people out there if they want to have a look at this kind of stuff. But there's some really great techniques out there which Carl Rogers talked about and some others where if another human being is present with another human being and just listens and accepts them for who they are, and actually really, really understands the issues they're going through, that in itself for 20 minutes enables the actual person themselves to actually understand what their problem is and how they're going to solve it. They don't need any coaching from us. They need the presence of another human being that actually sees them and hears them and enables them to move forward in their own problem solving. So it's a very similar approach, but we have the ability to do that as humans. And I think it's the young people now that are coming through. So I've got 3 kids, 2 grandkids. They're teaching us a lot about this now. They're the ones that want to take a bit more time out in nature to actually reflect on what their lives are going to be like. We need to start learning from them because I certainly haven't made the most of my 55 years on this planet in terms of coaching myself.
And thank you so much for opening us up to that level of awareness. And there must be some practical tools because you said there's a framework in the book. Maybe you can share maybe just 2 techniques, that your coaching framework presents that people can actually start applying today and maybe lead effectively or find a way into the forest, like you say.
Yeah, I'll mention 3 because in terms of the actual framework, it's very simple. It's not easy to do, but very simple. What people need to do through self-coaching is, first of all, reconnect with who they are. So that's the first phase. I'll give you an example about how somebody could do that. The second is then actually refocus on what's important in life because there's so much going on. I'll give you a technique about how to do that. And then the third thing, which I always try and relate to the listeners here that can remember Doctor Who, is regenerate. Regenerate yourself in terms of who you want to be, leading yourself going forward. And I try to imagine that as almost like the layers of an onion. So we're always peeling back that layer of an onion to reveal the more authentic version of ourselves. And that's the regeneration phase. So I'll give you a technique for that. I'll just keep them brief. So the first one, in terms of reconnecting with who we are, there's a great exercise that we can do, which is very strange to do at first, but it's worth doing. And it's just to write down on a piece of paper in front of you the question, who are you in relationship? And this is a very tough question to answer. But the reason I ask it, and I ask people to answer it, is because it's about, we've got themes and patterns in our relationships with people. And so it might be, for example, Prosper, you might say, if I ask you that question, who are you in relationship? You might say, well, I'm loving, I'm kind, I'm cuddly, I'm compassionate, all these things. And these are things that are true to you and valuable to you. And that gives you a sense. The second question is more important, though. On the piece of paper, I'd like people to write down, who am I not in relationship? And that's a more important question because that gives us some awareness about maybe how we're not showing up in relationships. So for me, who am I not in relationships? Sometimes I'm not necessarily good at keeping in touch with people. Okay, so some people will value that, some people won't. But really understanding and starting to raise awareness of asking ourselves the questions. And once we've got a few words written down, which are usually adjectives around those 2 questions, is going to speak to our friends, our colleagues, our family. Yeah, I was just thinking the other day, I've written these words down. Can you see these words in me in our relationship? And then just get some feedback and start to understand and build awareness about who we are. So we've got to reconnect with who we are, because a lot of the time we're actually hiding who we are or we're denying who we are. And we've just got to really reconnect. So that's the first one. Just a simple thing people can do, which usually helps. The second one is refocus. And this is a really, really important one. In the book, I discuss another book actually written by Greg McKeown, which I really recommend to people. And it's called Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, by Greg McKeown. He lives in Cambridge in the UK, but he's from North America. And the premise of the book, which is very simple, is we all need to be doing less to focus on the things that are important for us. So the next thing I want people to do listening to this to enable them to refocus more is, again, ask themselves a very simple question. And the question is, for me to be successful in what I choose to do in my life, what is it that I need to do that only I can do? So for me to be successful in the way I choose to live my life, what is it that I need to do that only I can do? Now, when we ask that question, whether it's in a professional environment or a personal environment, there are usually only 8 to 10 things that somebody can write down that they need to do each day to be successful that only they can do. So you can imagine all the things that we do in a day. There's a lot more than 8 to 10. So it gives us a real focus on how many of those 8 to 10 things that I need to do to be successful that only I can do, am I doing right now? And usually it's about 20 or 30% when I ask that question. So there's a whole 70% of time where I'm choosing to do other stuff. It might be because I like it, because I enjoy it, because I'm actually habitually doing it, but it doesn't really add anything to my life and how I want to be, because I don't necessarily need to do it. So that's the second element, to refocus. And then the third element, which I love, which is this regeneration. And again, it's in the book, but people can go and do this for free. You may have heard about this, Prosper. It's a concept written about by Shirzad Chamine in his book, Positive Intelligence. And it's a very simple survey that people can go and do. It's a lovely thing to do. Any individual can go and do this. Go to positiveintelligence.com or type in saboteurs into the internet, and you will find a survey there that Shirzad put together, which allows you to work out who are your key saboteurs in your mind that get in your way of actually achieving stuff each day. Because when we're feeling negatively each day, which we both do, and we all do, it means we're starting to judge ourselves, our environment, and other people. And as soon as we start judging, it affects our decision making. So that's a third thing I'd encourage people to do, to go in and look at that website, do the survey. You'll get a report back, which is free. It's for you, and nobody else sees it. And you'll see a list of the 10 saboteurs, and it'll give you the top 3, which, by the way, mine are controller, hyperachiever, and hyper-rational, which make me a fantastic leader, but actually get in the way of me being really strong in relationships. And I'm working on them every day. And you have another level of awareness. So those 3 levels of awareness: who am I in relationship? Who am I not in relationship? What's essential for me to do today to be successful that only I can do? And what's going to get in the way of me doing that each day because of my saboteurs? They usually are the thread through the self-coaching journey, which enable me to check in each day on how am I doing on those 3 things. And that's really what the basis of the self-coaching model is.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us through that. I mean, that alone could change a lot of people's lives, because so many people are just going through life, like you said, unconscious, going through the stages. You're born, you go to kindergarten, go to high school, go to university, get married, get a job, and maybe get promoted, or maybe just contract a disease and then you die. And that's the life that everybody's just going through. But what you've presented now, just indulge me here for a little bit, Andrew, sounds somewhat like a pattern break, which literally takes people to take cognizance of who they are, especially when you go in and reconnect with yourself, because everybody's just doing the do. All right.
Yeah.
And would you maybe comment on this a little bit? It sounds like what you have come up with, or what you've put together, is somewhat of a rite of passage.
Absolutely.
Hear me out for a bit. When we're 16, or I think, 16 for boys and 13 for girls in my culture, we're proverbially called in by village elders, Andrew, and they tap you on the shoulder and then they say, it's your turn to lead. What that means is you now are involved in public discourse, public conversations, and adult activities. Like, you are now allowed to stay up late or do whatever it is adults do, and maybe start your own family and things of that nature. So after that, everybody comes back different, because they're not a kid anymore. They don't sit with the kids, they don't eat with the kids, they're now sitting with the adults, either the male or the female. And that presents somewhat of a change in character with the person. They do that in Mexico, and they call it a bar mitzvah. They have it in the other cultures, and they call it no. I think a bar mitzvah is the Jewish, and then a quinceanera in Mexico. But we don't have that in the first world. Could this be something akin to that without calling it a a pattern break in that sort of way.
Absolutely, and I really love the link you've made there. We're talking now to a variety of organizations who really are trying to change education. I think certainly in the West and Western culture around education, there is this approach to rote learning and for you to gain knowledge. And yet what's left behind is the character of the young adult and what it is that they're here to do on this planet. What's their gift and how can they actually maximize that through who they are in relationships? And really, schools generally don't necessarily teach that. And certainly universities don't teach that. They give you an experience, but they certainly don't teach that. So I agree with what you're saying. If we can really start to incorporate it into a young person's life before they start their career, whatever they choose to do, it means they start taking responsibility for themselves. They start holding themselves to account, which means they can start to hold other people to account in relationships. And you and I both know the most reasons that organizations fail at leadership level is because of lack of accountability, whether that's government institutions, charitable institutions, commercial institutions. It's because there is very little accountability between people. So I love the link you're making there. And yeah, it's absolutely saying let's not wait for a trigger point, as you talked about earlier, where something devastating happens in our lives, which forces us to be like this. Let's do it proactively from the age where we're ready to do it and live our life in that way. I love that link.
Absolutely. And for the uninitiated, where would they go on the internet to find you, maybe to find out some of the things that you're doing and how they can also start their journeys to, unlock their leadership potential?
Sure. So the best place to go and find me really is on my website. So that's very simple. It's andrewtallents.com, TALLENTS.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm posting every day. So again, if you just type Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn, there's only one of me. So you'll be able to find me on there. I post good content there. And also, if you're interested in the self-coaching for leaders movement, then you can join us in School Community, SKOOL. If you look on that particular platform, you'll find, type in self-coaching for leaders, you'll find us in there and you can join the community and again, get access to other people who are interested in this and we share things with each other in terms of how we might use this in our everyday lives. So they're probably the easiest ways. And then if you type confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com into the net, you'll also get access to all of our podcasts where you can hear 52 guests at the moment who are all leaders that have been through their own journeys that can talk about their trauma and how they're now dealing with that in their lives and feeling more fulfilled. So they're probably the best ways to access my content.
Absolutely. I'll just make sure that all those details are in the show notes so that people can, start transforming their leadership. Because I really feel like, yes, we've got all these people that haven't been introduced to that sort of pattern break, and we've got fully grown babies that are running companies, that are flying our planes, and they're literally leading countries, and we're not doing anything, about that. But it would be remiss for me to not ask this, Andrew. So, have you found what you're looking for?
Well, that's a great question. And I think what I've learned in life is that I needed to stop looking. So I'm now grateful for what I have. I really appreciate the life I have. What I want to do is just live life in the present and notice what's going on around me so that I can enjoy it. So I've stopped looking and I'm just now trying to enjoy every single minute.
Absolutely. But, along the journey, you've self-coached yourself and at least managed to get a balancing act, and you've designed your life to prioritize family. You've mentioned your kids and grandkids. Obviously, they now come first. You know what I mean? You just mentioned them in passing. So that means they're, close, to you right now. How do you then, maybe advise people so they might not have started their journey, but how can people balance this personal fulfillment with professional ambition? Some people are always going to be wired to want to succeed, and that's just going to be a given. But you've now sort of managed to then even it out, and now you're actually excelling a lot more than I think you would have been in your directorship position and things of that nature. So yeah, congratulations. But how can people maybe get started on that balance?
So it's a great question. So I think it's about really reconnecting what I did in 2016, 2017. So look at yourself in the mirror and say, and this is usually the case, most people generally tend to be more successful professionally than personally. So they have very little time personally to spend on hobbies or with family or with friends. And yet professionally, they're very successful because they're earning the maximum they can earn right now. And they seem to be professional from the outside being successful. So what I would say to someone out there now that's listening to this is just really measure yourself. Am I feeling happy in both my personal and professional life? And if you are, carry on doing what you're doing. Absolutely fine. Maybe find other ways to earn more money. Fine. If one of them is out of balance and you feel not happy in one of them, then you need to do something about it. And you can follow the framework, you can go and speak to somebody, but it is possible to live both. And that's what I'm here on this planet to do, to teach people how to do that and to enable people to do that so they can be living their personal and professional lives successfully. And we can do it. I've seen plenty of examples around the world, and we can all do it. We don't need to sacrifice one for the other.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm in Melbourne, and we were one of the most locked down cities in the world during the pandemic. And when we came back, we were now coming back to a world that no longer exists. You've been mentioning AI and things of that nature. And I'm beginning to start thinking that every other job that was deemed non-essential during the pandemic, literally, if nobody needed it, you would notice that AI is sort of encroaching into those kind of jobs. So yeah, at the end of the day, most people are really measuring in things that might not be in existence in the next 2 to 3 years. Yet your family is going to be there in for the long haul. Okay. Now,
Can I say something on that? Props, can I just say one thing on that?
yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point you make, and I really do believe this. Let's say that in the next 5 to 10 years, and I do believe this, the AI will actually be able to do all the processes and tasks that you and I do today. All those processes and tasks, booking restaurants, doing work processes. Let's say it does all of that. The one thing it cannot do and will not be able to do is replace what you and I have now. It will not replace relationship. That's got to be a human endeavor. So therefore, the new currency of any organization, any founder, any endeavor, any community, anything out there that's going to make a difference is how strong am I showing up in relationship to this that I'm trying to do? And that's where we need to teach young people, everybody listening to this. We need to be as strong as we can in relationship through self-coaching. And if we can do that, AI will be supporting us, not actually making it difficult for us.
Absolutely, I quite like that. And obviously, a lot of people are just afraid that AI is going to take their jobs, but it's not going to take your empathy and it's not going to take your emotional intelligence. That's one thing
No.
for sure. Now, Andrew, when we started the conversation, you introduced us to the 15-year-old who was writing GSCE and received a letter on a blue note. Was that what it was, right?
Yeah.
You also mentioned you've got kids now. Is it a boy or is it a girl?
I've got 2 girls, 1 boy. I've got a granddaughter and a grandson.
Okay, so just pick one of them in your mind right now, and you obviously are away from them. You're in a hotel room right now, and you want to write that letter that your dad wrote, and you're gonna write it to one of them. What would that letter say?
That's a really great question. The way it would be written in the first place would be in a different way to my father, in the sense it would have this tone of unconditional love and acceptance in it. So that's the tone of the letter. And in the letter itself, it would just say, whenever you come up against something that you're not sure about or you're not sure how to handle, just remember, I'm here, your mum's here, there's lots of people here that love you, and basically just come to talk to us about it, and we'll always be able to solve it.
Wow. And now this really plays well into, because your dream is to enable millions of leaders, right,
Yeah.
worldwide, to actually start living their dreams. This is the kind of letter that you'd write to them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the only problems we have in life are ones which we invent for ourselves and we get in our own way. Everything else we can actually sort out. So if we can actually get out of our own way, we will live our dreams.
Fantastic. Wow. Man, I wish lots of people will receive this message right now. So now that we're in your world, Andrew, you've introduced us to school, you've introduced us to your book and everything else that you're working on. But what does the future hold for all of this that you're doing? What's next? What can we be excited about?
So for me, next, it's about organizational transformation. So that's both in education, it's in commercial institutions, it's in government institutions. I truly believe now that where the world is at, there's a real opportunity for a lot of organizations to act as the bridge between government and commercial organizations to enable social impact. So we will now be working with organizations going forward where we're enabling them to access self-coaching through AI, where all of their employees will be able to learn how to coach themselves on a daily basis. And the positive for the organization is that you will need and require fewer layers of middle management. We all know middle management is where the inertia is because we never train middle management properly. They never really know how to lead properly because they've not necessarily been given clear direction how to do that. And therefore, if we could reduce the layers of middle management, because those people then are able to go into other roles where they can be in relationship, it means then we're more effective, we're actually more profitable, and people feel more aligned and fulfilled to the work that they're doing. So that's our goal. That's our dream. We're working with CEOs now around the world to enable that to happen of various organizations. And that's what I'll continue to do. And also still do the one-to-one team coaching because that's what I love doing each day, and then keeping my hand in terms of the day-to-day coaching.
Andrew, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, your transformative journey, that you just shared with us on the Online Prosperity Show, it just really, really will help a lot of people unlock their true leadership, potential, and everything else along the way. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Prosper. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching, thank you so much for coming all the way with us. As you have noticed that Andrew's journey from corporate success to now personal fulfillment is actually a roadmap for leaders everywhere. So I'm going to be leaving the links for you to connect with Andrew on his podcast, on his community, and all the other places that you can start your journey on. But I really want to encourage you to maybe share this video with somebody who might be finding that misalignment with, or not able to get the balance in the life, and they're struggling to align their career with their actual purpose, or just simply needs a little inspiration to take the next step. Until next time, bye for now.